Today I'll be reading out some story notes associated with the classic Doctor Who serial, Fury from the Deep. This is read out from the TARDIS Data Core, Doctor Who's fan wiki. This story had a working title of The Colony of Devils. This was changed as the BBC was concerned about the use of the word devils in a program aimed at a family audience. No episodes of this six-part story exist in the BBC archives, unfortunately, and it is the last story to be completely missing. This story features the first appearance of the Doctor's sonic screwdriver. It was at first a common screwdriver, the script saying it is the Doctor's own version of a screwdriver, but upon seeing it, production assistant Michael Bryant suggested the use of one working with sonic waves, and Troughton picked up a pen light from the visual effects department. But on screen, the prop eventually used was a safety whistle taken from Deborah Watling's life preserver, due to Troughton accidentally dropping the penlight prop into the pipe on the day of shooting. This story was based on a drama that Victor Pemberton wrote for radio entitled The Slide, which focused on sentient mud rather than seaweed. The Slide was commissioned by Peter Bryant, who produced this serial. It featured David Spencer, Pemberton's real-life partner, Maurice Denham, Miriam Margoyles, Michael Kilgarriff, and furthermore, Joseph Gomez, the character who was essentially taking the role of the Doctor, was played by Roger Delgado, who would later go on to portray the Master. Pemberton's first draft of Fury from the Deep was also entitled The Slide and was submitted to the Doctor Who production office at around the same time as this radio script, shortly before the beginning of Season 2. But story editor David Whittaker rejected it, feeling it wasn't appropriate for the show and commenting that it was rather a stew pot of all other science fiction serials we have ever done, with bits of Nigel Neal scattered about. Nothing wrong with that. Well, that's me. That's my interjection, excuse me. I don't think the dialogue is very good, and I am quite sure it is not right for Doctor Who. Peter Ducrot provided the voice of the guard in Episode 1, heard over a speakerphone on duty at the main entrance of the Esga refinery, who refuses Maggie Harris access. He is perhaps better known as Adam Adamant's archenemy, the Face, a leather-masked villain who spoke in sinister whispering tones in the offbeat fantasy adventure series Adam Adamant Lives, 1966-67. That series was created by Sidney Newman and produced by Verity Lambert, the creator and original producer of Doctor Who, respectively, as I'm sure many of us, or some of us here know. Towards the end of this story, the Doctor records Victoria's screams, which are then used to defeat the weed creature. However, the screams heard are not those of Deborah Watling, as she had a terrible cold on the day of recording and was unable to scream. Instead, the screams are provided by assistant floor manager Margot Hayhoe, and Watling simply mimed over them. The scene featuring the final confrontation with the weed creature had to be achieved in a single take because it was so complex. This was largely due to the excessive amount of foam that was required for the scene, which meant that it could not be rehearsed beforehand. For the beginning of Episode 1, Victor Pemberton wrote the TARDIS as materializing at the top of a cliff near the coastline with the Doctor, Jamie and Victoria then having to make their way down the cliff to get to the beach. This was deemed too similar to The Rescue. That's a first Doctor two-parter, so Hugh David, the director, suggested the idea of having the TARDIS land on the water, something that had never been done before. The shot was achieved by having a miniature TARDIS, the same one that was used in The Romans, suspended from a helicopter by piano wire. Two characters had their names changed to avoid confusion with other serials. Price was originally named Blake, but this was changed to avoid confusion with Corporal Blake in the previous story, The Web of Fear, while Quill was originally named Swan, but this was changed to avoid confusion with Swan in The Enemy of the World. John Abineri remarked that the scene where Van Lutyens gets dragged into the foam by the weed creature was dangerous for him to film. He explained that, roughly 4 feet beneath the foam, there was a platform where he was supposed to land on and then crouch, which he successfully did, but because the platform was very small, he very nearly lost his footing, which meant he would have fallen 30 feet, and he believed that the crew would have thought the scene was successful and wouldn't have noticed that something had happened to him. A sneak preview of the Doctor's latest forthcoming adversary was featured in the 2-page behind-the-scene article in The Monstrous World of Doctor Who, written by Gay Search, which was published in Radio Times, cover dated 20th to 26th of January 1968, for the week of transmission of The Enemy of the World, Episode 4. Very little footage survives of this story, making its episodes several of the missing episodes that do not exist in the BBC's archives. However, a full set of telesnaps and the full audio do exist for the story. In July 2003, 3 minutes 32 seconds of footage from episode 6 of this story were recovered from the BBC archives at Windmill Road by Andrew Martin. The footage was on 16mm negative film and consisted of scenes of the weed creature attacking the control room. However, this footage is not from the broadcast episode, but is in fact mute alternate takes. we'll close it here, I suppose. Thanks again, good and dear friends. Appreciate it immensely. We'll finish this up for the retrospective of episode 3 of Fury from the Deep. Thanks again, guys.